Hi Sugar Snaps, I have a clay drop spindle I want to go through the process of how to create with you. This is a part of a series I'm doing on different handmade drop spindles, so you can create your own drop spindle for spinning at home. This one using polymer clay, and I'll go over the tools and materials with you now. First off, you'll want some polymer clay. This is the Sculpey clay. You can use Primo or Fimo. Soften your clay up before you start to use it. We'll go over that here in a few minutes, but I have this out of the package pre-kneaded to get started with. I also have a acrylic rolling pin. You can use any kind of rolling pin or cylindrical object to roll out the clay. I'm just using this clay rolling pin. I have a clay knife. This is just a thin blade, one side sharp and one side's not. You can put the little handle on it. This isn't super necessary, it's just nice to have beside you in case you need it. I also have a little project tray in case I want to work the clay on the tray, a cup hook for the hook at the top of your drop spindle, a straw for punching the hole in the whorl, a dowel. This is a 9-inch dowel I've cut to length using a hacksaw. Your length of dowel depend on the size of the whorl you create, and we'll go over that later. But have a dowel about a 1/4 inch thick. You could go up to a 1/2 inch if you're using a large whorl, but we'll go over that in a few minutes. You want a ruler, some wood glue. This is Gorilla Wood Glue. A baking dish. I have a little one. You can use a regular sized one. A piece of, this is 120 sandpaper for smoothing down your dowel. And then here I have 2 different sizes. This is a mason jar lid, and then I also have another lid that's a little bit smaller. So I'll be cutting 2 different sizes of circles and stacking them together to create the top whorl. The other things you'll need are a piece of parchment paper to place on your surface. Working with polymer clay, it leaves a residue on the surface you're working with, so having something to work on is really helpful. Also, quick note, when you're done working with polymer clay, be sure to wash your hands and the surface you worked on with soapy water. That will remove the residue, and it also removes any toxins from your hands that you don't want to get into your food or your mouth. So just keep that in mind. I also have a plastic clamp here. This will hold on the side of the table to, once we put the whorl on the dowel, then we'll clamp it against the table so that it can dry sitting on the side. So one of these. I have 2 notebooks. The purpose for these is that they're a 1/4 inch thick. They're the thickness of the whorl. I'm going to set them on my work surface and then use them as guides for the rolling pin. So the clay will be in the circle or the center, and then I'll roll the clay out so that it maintains a 1/4 inch thickness. And a heavy book on the side of your workspace, we'll use that in the last step to attach the whorl to the dowel. So to get started with creating your whorl, we're going to warm up the clay. And to warm up polymer clay, you're just gonna knead it. Roll it in your hands and knead it until the heat of your hands transfers to the clay and it starts to be more malleable. So I'm rolling it and then pulling it out, kind of creating a log, and then I'm going to fold it in half, continue to press it together, and just do this kneading process until it's warm and easy to work with. And you can also use multiple colors when working with polymer clay. They're easy to mix to create different colors. So I have the green here and the light blue, and I think what I'm going to do is combine the 2 to create kind of a marbled look. You're going to want to use 3/4 of a package of Sculpey clay, so that's about a palm size full. So this is a full package. I'm going to take off, guesstimate a 1/4 amount, take that off. And then, so that's about the amount that you would be working with to create the bottom section of your whorl. So warm that up, And then if you decide to add another color to your clay to kind of combine it, go ahead and pinch off the amount that you're going to be adding so that you end up with that 3/4 of a package worth. So I'm going to take off about the same amount I removed and add that to it, but I'm going to do that by rolling this into a log. As a kid, I called this making snakes. So you roll it into a log and then do the same with the other one. If you're wearing rings, it's also probably a good idea to take them off because they do catch the clay and the clay gets stuck and it's hard to get that out. So take those off. You can also create a log on the table by rolling it out like so, and then combine the two together. Put one next to the other, kind of stick it to itself, and then twist the two so that it becomes candy cane-like. I'm just gonna twist and twist, and then fold it in half, squish it together, roll it, and then fold in half, roll it, fold it in half, and this time I'm going to twist to create some stripes. You can do this process more controlled so that the stripes or swirls are more precise. I'm just doing this kind of randomly just to get some interest into the coloration of my whorl. So I'm not being particular about what the stripes are doing or how they're forming. So I'm getting some variegation here. And I'm going to do a couple more twists. I don't want to completely mix the colors. I'll end up with a light green if I do that. Mix until they're totally combined together. I just want to get some marbling like this here. So I'm happy with this. And once you have reached that point where you are, like what you've created, go ahead and roll this between your palms until it forms a ball and all of the creases in the ball have been removed. So I'm just holding it between both palms and rolling it around, allowing the ball to rotate through all sides. And then check it to see if there are any creases, and I have a little bit of a crease here, so I'm going to roll a few more rotations. Okay, and the crease is pretty much gone, so I'll start rolling it out on my surface now. So this is where you'll want your parchment paper and your two notebooks. You could also use stacks of sticky notes or another type of book, something that raises both sides up evenly so that you can roll in between. Now, to create your circle, I'm going to set the ball on my workspace and rotate it to the point where I kind of like the pattern, because that will be the top of the whorl. And then press it down with your palm just to flatten it out a bit, like so. And then using the rolling pin, gently roll it out, starting from the center and working out, and then rotate your clay, roll it out again. And you're doing this until you've hit your notebooks or whatever you're using to hold up the sides of the rolling pin. Okay, so I've reached the thickness of my notebooks. It's not going any flatter. I'm gonna rotate it one more time just to make sure it's totally even. So that's all rolled out and flat, and it's about 1/4 inch thick from using the notebooks. When creating a whorl for a drop spindle, you want the balance to be pretty precise because it will affect the way the whorl spins or your drop spindle spins. So to get an even spin, you want the weight of the whorl to be accurate. So one way we do that is by having the notebooks here to create an even thickness of the bottom part of the whorl. And another part is by using a precise circle to create the top of the whorl. So here I have a mason jar lid. You could also use the lid from some other plastic container, as long as the lip on the inside is at least 1/4 inch up inside the lip, because you don't want that to press into the clay. So I'm going to use my mason jar lid here as a cookie cutter and come to the whorl, the clay, and position it where I want based on what this looks like. This will be the top pattern on your whorl. So I think I'm going to stick it here and then press down evenly through the clay, and you can pull the sides away. You'll end up with a little bit extra here. And lift this up. And then before punching it out of the mason jar, I'm going to go around and wipe away any excess around the edges at the bottom and add that to my clay pile. And then the nice thing about using a mason jar lid is that you can gently push through the top to get the clay out without having to wedge your finger in the side and mess up your nice circle. So there's the first circle. Now with the mason jar lid, there's some edges kind of squished out. Go in and press those into the side, smoothing them down. I'm rotating and pressing in here. Like so. And then give it a nice gentle roll on both sides one more time. And press in any sides that are kind of squishing out so that your sides are nice and straight. Here is one layer of your top whorl, and I'll set this aside to create the next piece. So this is a double stack whorl, so we have the first piece, and I'll use this lid to create a second piece. So roll out the leftover clay you have. You might have to add a little bit of clay to get this second piece. We'll see here if I roll this into a ball, if I have enough. So the same process, roll it into a ball, make sure you don't have any creases, and then press it down and roll it out using your guides. And the reason I'm rotating the clay as I work is that if you roll in one direction, it'll press it out in that direction. And so rotating it kind of evens out the direction it's pressing out. So you end up with more of a circle and less of a strip. Okay, so I'll check here, and I have just the perfect amount. I'll have a little bit of excess, but that circle fits into that piece of clay. So again, I'll use this as a cookie cutter, and I'll press down onto the clay and then lift up and peel off the edges. If you didn't cut all the way through, you can press around where the edge is and then pull that away. And so we end up with a tiny bit of excess clay here that we can use for another project. Set that aside and then shake out or gently pull out your second circle. And this one is more tricky because it's shoved in there. So getting an edge free might mean going around the circle and just kind of loosening it with your finger. Until you can gently pull it out, like that. Okay, and again, there's some edges that are a little rough. We'll go around and smooth those down. And then set it on our surface and gently roll one side, flip it over, roll on the other side. And I'm rotating it again, folding in the, pressing in the edges to line up or just smooth out the clay. Okay, so now I have 2 circles. You can set aside your raised pieces and put one circle on your large circle on your work surface, and we'll set the small circle right in the center. Now to find the center, you want to find the exact center, and to do that, I'll show you a quick trick of how to do that process. This is where you'll want to use your ruler. If you want to see this process more clearly, check out this video here where I go over how to do this with more detail. So you're going to line up one edge of your ruler with one edge of the circle and gently trace in a line. And I'm not even using the graphite, I'm just using it to press into the clay to create a little gentle line there. And then go in from the other side, line up the ruler against that side. You want this line to be perfectly parallel, or as parallel as your eyeball can make it. So line those 2 up, create a line across there. Now I have a very narrow window here, but from one corner to the opposite corner of that line, I'm going to create a line diagonally. So from this edge here to this edge here, we'll draw a line. And then doing the opposite, so we're creating an X in the center of this circle. Okay, so then where the 2 cross, I'm gonna do this line again because I can't see it very well. Okay, where the 2 lines cross, which is right here, that is the center of your circle. And you can now take your straw and center it on that space and create or punch your hole for your whorl, for your dowel to go in. Okay, so there is your first circle ready to go. Now for this second circle, I'm actually going to use the width of the dowel to make my lines. So I'm lining the edge of the dowel up with the edge of the circle, doing that, doing a line there, and then edge of the dowel with the edge of the circle parallel to that first line, like so. And then diagonally from one corner to the other, and then diagonally again. And there's my center point. So again, you can go in with your straw and create another hole right in the center, like so. Okay, so your 2 circles for your whorl are ready to go. Now I have lines on the top of my whorl, and you may not want to leave those behind, so go ahead and gently rub them out by using your fingertip or your thumb to carefully rub them out without destroying this shape of the circle. And then you'll use the center circle to line up the 2 and press carefully down the smaller circle onto the larger circle, and use your rolling pin, just very gently press down the smaller circle onto the top circle. You're just bringing the 2 together and pressing them together slightly so they adhere to one another. And there is your whorl piece for your drop spindle. We have some nice marbling texture here. And we've found the center of our circle. You can now go ahead and check to see that your dowel fits into the hole, and if it needs a little bit more space so that you can get the dowel on once it's cooked, using the dowel now to create that larger space will help you later. So I'll go on one side and then go on the other way, creating my hole. And it does shrink a tiny bit, so making it a little bit bigger than you expect to need will help you out. Okay, so your whorl is ready to go. Set it on your baking dish and you'll bake this in the oven. For Sculpey clay, you will follow the instructions on the packaging, but typically it's 275 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes per 1/4 inch. So our thickness here is 2/4 inches, so obviously that's 1/2 inch. So we'll want to bake this for about 20 to 30 minutes according to the instructions on the package. But make sure to check the instructions on the package of clay that you use. It might be different depending on the brand or type of clay. So go ahead and bake your top whorl, and then we'll come back and put your spindle together. When your whorl has come out of the oven, allow it to cool until it's cool to the touch and you can handle it without getting burned. That will take about 20 minutes, so let it sit. It also is slightly soft when you first bring it out of the oven. You want it to completely harden, so allowing it that time to cool down works well. Now, to attach the whorl to your spindle staff or the dowel, you'll want to first obviously cut the length of the dowel that you want for your drop spindle. And here I have kind of estimated the proportion that I want by placing it onto my dowel and then figuring out the length. And you can do this by looking at the proportion and estimating how long you want the dowel cut, or just go off of the fact that this is a 3-inch circle, you want a 9-inch dowel. So using a 120 grit sandpaper, sand down the entire dowel so that it's nice and smooth, and then also catch the ends. And to do the ends, I like to hold the sandpaper on the table and then actually rub the dowel onto the sandpaper, and that rubs off the ends, smooths them down. And you can also rotate and do the edges of the ends so they're nice and smooth. And if there are any divots in the top of your dowel, kind of sand those away as well so that everything's nice and smooth. And then sand the length. And I'm sanding while rotating, so I'm getting all edges of the dowel. You can also hold the sandpaper like this in your hand and set the dowel into the sandpaper and rotate as you go back and forth. And then do the other end. So I've rounded off the end a bit. It's all smooth, the full length. I have that end, and all divots are sanded out, so I have a nice smooth piece. You can wipe this off with a towel. Now we'll position the whorl onto the spindle by pushing the dowel through the hole, and you might have a side that's slightly thinner than another, so press that in to the point that you want it to land. And here I'm eyeballing it, but I have about 1.5 inches at the top of my spindle where I want the whorl to land. Open up your glue, and my glue is pretty thick, so it's hard to squeeze out, so I'm going to use a paintbrush. You can also squeeze it in using the spout, and I'll do this by moving the whorl down a ways and then putting glue where I want the whorl to land around the dowel. So I'm placing glue around the outside of the dowel, and then squeeze, press up the dowel, or press up the whorl so that you're covering the glue, and use your finger to smooth out any excess glue so that it fills the hole but it doesn't come gushing out. And then use your clamp to clamp the end right up against the whorl so that it doesn't move, so that we can go in and put some glue on the other side right against the hole. Fill that space, and then use your finger to wipe away any excess. Okay, so there's your dowel and whorl glued together. Now check it from the side to make sure the whorl is on straight, and straight up and down. The whorl's on straight. And then you can use this clamp again to hold that in place. So I'll place my drop spindle here on the edge and put the book right on top of the spindle, and allow the clamp to swing to the side. And allow that to dry until the glue has totally dried through, which you'll want to look at the directions on the back of your glue bottle to make sure the dry time, or check the dry time. I'm gonna leave mine for 24 hours just to be sure that nothing moves around. You can always add another layer of glue around to hold it in place, to make sure that it's steady once the first layer has dried. So tomorrow I might come back and add another layer of glue, allow that to completely dry before I finish the process. So we'll finish adding the cup hook as soon as that's dried. Once your drop spindle has dried, you're ready to put the cup hook in the top of your spindle. And because we're using a 1/4 inch dowel, you're going to want to start the hole with the drill and create your hole before you put your cup hook in the end, or else you'll crack the dowel. I'll start that out using my knife. I'm going to create a little bit of a divot in the end so that I have a place for the drill to sit in. It'll be really hard to get a hole right into the end of your dowel if you don't kind of create a guide for it to go in. So I'll come in here, and on the end I'm going to just stick the knife in and create a small divot. And be careful when you're using a knife to use good knife safety. And then I'm going to take the drill, and I have a small bit in the drill, and I've just taken my cup hook and looked at the end, the screw end of the cup hook, and compared it to the smallest drill bit that I had. And I'm going to use that small drill bit because it will be just a little bit smaller than the cup hook. So the cup hook will screw in tightly, but the drill bit will remove enough of the wood material so that the cup hook doesn't crack the dowel. Take your drill and bring your dowel right up to the drill, making sure to have the drill and the dowel be even so that they're parallel to each other in the same line. And we're going to use that divot in the end to carefully put the drill against the dowel and start to drill out the center. Okay, and once you have a hole here in the top, take your cup hook, put it in the end, and screw it in like so. So now your cup hook is in the end of your drop spindle. Like this video because it helps me make more and better videos, and check out the other drop spindle videos in this drop spindle series. You can find the links to those in the description below. Check the description for lots of other goodies, including my email list that you can sign up for to get updates from my website and YouTube channel, as well as resources for lots of fiber arts and textile arts. I'd love for you to join my community. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.